Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of 2021 of the TxDOT Bike Advisory Committee. I'm going to do a brief call to order, and then we're going to modify a couple of things on our agenda, but I'll go over that after we do a quick roll call. I'm Carla Weaver, the chair. Bobby Gonzalez, are you here?
I am present. Thank you, Carla.
Thanks, Bobby. Good to hear your voice. Chelsea Slater?
Yes, here. Good morning.
Morning. Clint McManus?
Here.
Great. Eddie Church?
Here.
All right. Miss Eva Garcia?
Present.
Mr. Frank Rotnowski?
Good morning, present.
Morning, Frank. Sorry, every time I think I say that incorrectly. I apologize.
No, you got it.
Good. Jeff Pollock? Jeff, are you with us? All right. We'll come back to Jeff.
Jeff is here. Jeff is here, but we just can't hear him.
Okay, Jeff may be having some audio issues. All right, Jeff, we'll record you as here. Mike Schofield?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks.
Great. Rick Ogan?
Present.
Great. And then finally, last but not least, Mr. Trent Berkshire.
Good morning, Carla. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year.
All right, great, Trent. Happy New Year to you. All right, so we're very excited to have Commissioner Vaughn with us here today. One of our TxDOT commissioners, he actually is from the Dallas-Fort Worth region, so it's particularly exciting for me. He can only be with us for about 30 minutes this morning, so we're going to rearrange a little bit the agenda. We're actually going to move to item 4 and let Commissioner Vaughn kick us off with some opening remarks. Commissioner Vaughn, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I apologize for no video. I was unable to get on the program here with my iPad, so I'm on my computer, which does not have a camera, so I apologize for that. But good morning, all, and thank you for inviting me to participate in your important work. In particular, I would like to not only express TxDOT's appreciation for all committee members for their participation in important work on the BAC, but also to Chair Carla Weaver for her steadfast and meaningful contributions over the years. I would also like to thank staff members Eric and Donna and Bonnie and Noah and Carl for all of the important things to keep the BAC organized behind the scenes. Since most of us have not met before, thought I would just give you just a real brief background on myself. I was born and raised in Dallas, attended schools here, finished high school up in Indiana, went to UT Austin. I've been in the energy and real estate businesses for over 40 years, which is amazing because I'm only 39 years old, but anyway, just joking there. I was asked by Governor Abbott to chair TxNet from 2016 to 2019. That was a program managed by UT Austin's Bureau of Economic Geology to manufacture, deploy, and measure in real-time seismicity across the state. That was a fun project because it was a startup program, and Texas was the first state to implement such a system. And then in 2019, I was appointed to the TxDOT Commission. I assume all of you enjoy walking or cycling, I should say and/or cycling, and being in the outdoors. I also enjoy being outdoors and currently enjoy jogging, not running, but jogging, cycling, spin, snow skiing, and golf. In another life, I participated in many 5 and 10Ks, marathons, and triathlons, as well as some mountain climbing, which I was fortunate to obviously survive, but definitely would not recommend it. A few things I have noticed during the first year and a half on the commission. Safety, obviously, is number one. The following numbers are a bit outdated, but I think you'll appreciate the trend regarding our Road to Zero initiative. Since November 2007, we've had over 67,000 fatalities on Texas roadways, which includes cyclists and pedestrians. In 2019, the national pedestrian fatalities were 6,590, and in Texas had 659, or exactly 10% of national fatalities. Now, between pedestrians and cyclists, 20% of the fatalities on our roadways in Texas were from pedestrians and cyclists. So, obviously, that's a pretty shocking number to me, and I'm not sure I understand it, but I would, y'all may be doing some work on that, but I'd really like to get a little more insight in that. I'm sure part of it has to do with awareness and people focusing on their cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I would encourage you to consider these sobering numbers as we plan for safe networks and to get the message out about this as well. In light of this, what the BAC is doing is literally saving lives by making walking and cycling more safe and enjoyable. As far as opportunities and attributes of pedestrian and cycling networks go, again, it supports safety, or they support safety as number one. It supports TxDOT's mission of connecting you with Texas. It supports decongesting densely populated and vehicular traffic and bottlenecks. It supports business and economic development. For example, here in Dallas, we have the Katy Trail, which they have documented as having the investment in the Katy Trail has returned itself in excess of 50-to-1 return on investment, and that's still growing today. This can be done and is being done in other areas, as y'all know. It also supports public health and optionality. Environmental factors support pedestrian and cycling networks. Do you remember the Amazon RFP questions regarding their corporate relocation questionnaires? They wanted to know all about the trail networks. And I think we'll see more and more of that in the future, particularly as corporations continue to move to Texas. There is substantial public support. For example, as you know, the SRTS and the transportation alternatives were oversubscribed 10-to-1 for the $20 million in available funds last year. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but let's keep encouraging more focus on further developing these alternative transportation networks, because it's a win-win-win for our communities, metro areas, and the state. With the demographic projections for Texas growing from its current population of roughly 30 million to 50 million by 2050, which is only 28 years from now, and probably growing faster and larger than the estimations due to COVID, corporate, and individual relocations, we need to be pedaling faster. We need to step up our efforts and encourage separating pedestrian and cyclists from vehicles and further connecting our communities. The bottom line is Texas needs all transportation options. It's not all about roadways and highways. It's not all about pedestrian and cycling networks. It's not all about mass transit or high-speed trains. Texas needs it all. I consider all of us one big team focused on these important projects, so I am very supportive of your efforts and look forward to being of any help I can. So it's nice to meet you in this format, and I'll turn it, and I appreciate you all letting me join you today. And back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate those remarks. The next item that we're going to on our agenda is number 5, and it's going to be our report from TxDOT's Public Transportation Division Director regarding statewide bicycle and pedestrian matters. Eric Gleason, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Carla. and thank you, Commissioner, for your comments. I think that the committee is certainly music to their ears to hear a commissioner be so supportive of their efforts. And I think a little later on today, we'll be talking about key initiatives for the committee to undertake in the near future, in the coming year. And I think we can incorporate your thoughts into that discussion, particularly around the safety topic. So real quickly, an update on a number of items for the committee. The rule changes that you all recommended to expand the scope of the committee to include pedestrian interests are making their way through the process. The commission did adopt them as proposed rules in December. They are now out for public comment. That public comment period ends January 25th. And at this point in time, we are anticipating recommending that the commission consider final rules at their February commission meeting. We've not gotten any comment yet to date, and so I'm anticipating this to be a relatively smooth effort. Next, as I mentioned, you will later on today be talking about a next major effort, and I think in conjunction with the expanded scope of the committee, I would encourage committee members to begin thinking about and talk about this under item 7, whether or not we think we just need to go back and update our current strategic direction report. It's probably going on 5 years now since it was created initially, and we've used it as a reference point to pick off what we want to work on next, but I think it may also make sense to take a step back and spend some time just updating it. Transportation alternatives. So to date, we've had 3 calls for projects under the Transportation Alternatives Program, 2015, 2017, and 2019. And as you'll talk on a little bit more later today, we are preparing a 2021 call. So we try and do these calls every other year. And just to give you a quick overview of where we stand with projects built and in use. So out of the 2015 call, all projects from that call have been let for construction. And I'm trying to remember what the total was for 2015. It's a fairly significant number of projects. So they've all been let for construction, and over half of them are complete. 2017, almost 95% of the projects have been authorized for construction. 4 of those projects are complete. And then of the 2019, which is our most recent group, 60% of those projects have an agreement between ourselves and the project sponsor, and the other 40% are nearing execution of those agreements. So we're making progress. The 2021 call opens today, and we're looking at having with a combination of funds we're currently carrying as not attached to a project, adding in then anticipated FY23 and 24 funding. We're looking at about $23.5 million for non-urban area projects. Those are projects in communities of less than 5,000 in population, and anticipating another $13 million for projects to small urban area efforts, those communities being from 5,000 to 200,000, recognizing that historically we've had more project applications from that area. That $13 million I just referenced is actually anticipated fiscal year 23 and 24 funding. So that group is a little further out in terms of the funding streams we have available, but also part of this call which opens today. And later on today, the committee will get in discussion to help us understand how we should weight some of the evaluation criteria. And then finally, so we have been conducting these virtual meetings via WebEx. And for our April meeting, we are anticipating changing our format from WebEx to Zoom. Zoom generally has some additional accessibility options that we don't have with WebEx. And we are hoping to include in the April meeting an American Sign Language interpreter and closed captions. So we're trying to make continuous progress toward opening these meetings up to any and all who might wish to participate. And that, Madam Chair, concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions on anything I've said.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions for Eric about the items he presented or other items? All right, not hearing any. The next item we want to kind of shift around a little bit is going to be item number 7. So this is an update on our bikeway design effort and discussions on the next BAC efforts. And Carl and Bonnie are going to present on this item. Carl and Bonnie?
Thank you so much, Carla. Bonnie, if you could hand me the ball, I will go ahead and present our presentation. Alrighty. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, BAC members and the other audience members. As mentioned, I will be providing a brief update on the ongoing bikeway design effort. I'd like to briefly cover our project schedule and discuss the content of the remaining meetings. Additionally, I will provide a brief overview of some of the content of the working group has been reviewing over the last several months. Afterwards, I will hand the presentation over to Bonnie, who will facilitate discussion on what may await the Bicycle Advisory Committee after we complete this effort. Phase 2 of the bikeway design effort is divided into 4 topic categories. The working group meets monthly to cover a portion of each topic category, develops and refines interim guiding principles, and then brings these interim guiding principles to the BAC for approval. In this way, the BAC and working group together work through a large amount of detail and refine it into a set of bikeway design and guiding principles, which may influence TxDOT's projects, processes, procedures, and guidance. As you can see here, we plan to bring interim guiding principles from the intersections and conflict points topic category to the BAC in April. And we plan to wrap up in the with maintenance section in July. This slide provides a little more detail on our monthly activities. Next week's working group meeting will feature a discussion on green and other pavement markings, while meetings from February to April will feature maintenance topics and the refinement of interim guiding principles. In May and June, the working group and TxDOT staff will be working to refine the maintenance guiding principles and compile previously approved guiding principles. In the last several months, the working group has been discussing bikeway design elements and countermeasures for bicycle conflict points. As you can see here, we began by discussing the elements of a protected intersection. These range from bend outs, pedestrian safety islands, corner aprons, and so on. These intersection design elements are generally recommended when separated or protected bike lanes reach an intersection. Next, we discussed the design considerations when bikeways interact with transit. Bikeway investments can leverage public investment in transit networks, but buses can also be a major stressor for bicyclists. We discussed design options, bus stop positioning, and other multimodal considerations where bikeways meet transit. We also spent time discussing bike signals and signs. This meeting featured slides on bike signal applications, operations, and placement. Mid-block crossings, crossing signals, characteristics and applications, along with bicycle detection. And at the end of last year, we discussed design elements of railroad and driveway conflict points. And as just discussed, next week's meeting will discuss the applications and the various material technologies of green pavement markings and other pavement materials. And as we overview the variety of design countermeasures that we've discussed, it seemed relevant to add this toolbox. It highlights the three main design tasks that promote bicycle safety: defining modal space, slowing traffic, and making bicyclists conspicuous or more easily seen. Additionally, this slide provides specific design elements that may be considered. I won't read them all, but some countermeasures include green pavement or green lanes, striping through intersections, grade separation, curb extensions, bike signals, and mid-block crossings. While not an exhaustive list, this is just an overview of the topics that the working group has been mulling over. And with that, I will turn it over to Bonnie.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone. We thought it would be a good time, since we didn't have action on this bikeway design effort today, to get everyone thinking about the next major effort that the BAC will undertake. Next slide, please. You may recall in 2015, the BAC worked with TxDOT to develop a strategic direction report for TxDOT's bicycle program. The document identified actions to undertake in 7 focus areas to advance bicyclists and, to a certain degree, pedestrian infrastructure in TxDOT's programs and policies. We would encourage you all to review the SDR between now and the April meeting to get you prepared for further discussion on this topic. Next slide. The BAC and TxDOT have accomplished a number of efforts that support the 7 focus areas. The 2 major ones are listed here. The BAC completed the Bicycle Tourism Trail Study in 2018, which laid the foundations for a statewide bicycle network. And we continue to take efforts to advance that study. The current bikeway design effort is focused on building safer and better bicycle and pedestrian accommodations through developing recommendations from the BAC on TxDOT's design guidelines and project development processes. This effort, the bikeway design effort, is also leading to the development of bikeway design expertise through the department by informing guidance and policies, and through the establishment of knowledge-sharing resources among staff. Next slide. Additionally, TxDOT has been working behind the scenes to advance a number of other efforts in the other 4 focus areas by developing data resources such as the Bike Ped Count program and a facility inventory, internal Bike to Work Day efforts to encourage staff to get on their bikes, educational pieces, and advancing projects that are funded through the regular calls for projects for Transportation Alternatives Funds. Next slide. So we wanted to begin a conversation with you guys today about what the BAC should take on next. In light of the expansion of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, as Eric mentioned earlier, to include pedestrians and related micromobility issues, we see a key opportunity to update the SDR. So today we wanted to start with an initial brainstorm and get your ideas started, and then follow up by email to gather more thoughtful feedback. In April, we're going to come back to you and summarize the input and organize that input for further discussion and prioritization with the BAC members. And in July, we would like the BAC to take action on identifying the next effort to undertake. And then we will be ready to kick it off in October after the Bikeway design effort is complete. So today, let's just start with getting your thoughts on how well we, the BAC and TxDOT, are at accomplishing what we set out to do. And what areas do you feel need attention? So if we start with the first discussion question, I'm going to mute myself so you guys can talk. And we just want to get your initial thoughts on how well are we at accomplishing what we set out to do.
All right, thanks, Bonnie and Carl. So who would like to kick it off? What are people's perceptions of everything that the plan laid out and the tools and the products that have been developed to date? Have we hit the goal for all of them? Are there areas that are still needed, or what are people's general thoughts? And we may want to go back to slide 10 that talks a little bit about the activities that have been completed. There we go.
I actually had a question about the facility inventory that was mentioned. And so what project name does that fall under?
I can jump in and answer that. Not muted, am I good? That is, I don't know if it's necessarily captured under one of these efforts listed here, but it is an effort actually that's going on through the design division as they are preparing to update their ADA transition plan. So they're not only documenting all the bikeways on TxDOT maintained roadways, but also all of the pedestrian facilities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was helpful to know. I think regionally we're looking to do facility inventory as well and kind of quality check our geospatial database. But on a statewide level, that was very interesting to see that's being developed because I wasn't as aware of it. But yeah, I feel like I usually do a lot of talking, so I'd be interested to hear it other people before I get started.
And we can definitely follow up, make the connection between the design staff working on that, and they can tell you about their consultant contract and how they're accomplishing that. We'll follow up with you.
Carl,
Thank you so much.
Would you even mind going up to slide 8? I think that will remind people of the 6 focus areas that are currently in the plan. So expanding the bikeway network, building safer and better bicycle and pedestrian accommodations, providing training, education to the public, encouraging people to walk and bike more, developing a statewide management system of information, and then funding more projects. So are any of those areas that people think need a little bit more attention, more products, more information, or nope, did we reach the goal line on all of these and we can say we're done? What do you guys think?
This is Frank. I'm not saying we haven't done this because I think we have, but I think in terms of educating the public, not only on safe driving and bicycling and walking, but facing the inevitable. I think all of us that are involved in this world understand that, traditional ways of getting around mobility is no longer just a car. Cities are, their resources are being strained. It's just, like more education specifically on that. I mean, I even recently saw an article by Governor Abbott that, totally understood that we can no longer plan our city and our state the way we've been doing it. It needs to change. And he was quoting his daughter, telling him the reasons why. And I think if we have an opportunity to kind of reinforce and get that message out to the general population, to the state, the more that we can get that message out, little by little, it will filter into the collective. That's my comment.
Thanks, Frank.
And
Others?
Frank, just to be concise, the message specifically is safety education for drivers and bicyclists alike.
Alike, but also just that we can no longer design ourselves out of congestion solely, solely working with streets and roads and cars.
Thank you.
Other ideas?
We need to offer more mobility options and get people to understand that. I think, like I said, everyone here understands that, but I don't think that a lot of the general population, that message still isn't out.
This is Clint. I think Frank makes a good point that I agree with. I just looking at the document and all of the goals under each of the focus areas, it's ambitious. I mean, and I think that's, it's good to be ambitious. A lot of the stuff is, I think there's just not enough staff power or, even BAC time to be able to accomplish all of this. I don't know if that's something that we can really change, but a lot of the goals here seem to be, things that I would love to be working on, but I don't know that we have the time. Yeah, I don't know how to address that. I think one that sticks out to me that kind of gets to what Frank was discussing is funding more bicycle and pedestrian projects, and that's definitely not something that I feel like we as the BAC have a lot of power over. I think those decisions may be made above us, but I do think, kind of piggybacking on what Frank was saying, that in Houston at least, I feel like there's a big disconnect between what community members are saying they want and then what is coming down from the funding levels. And to be quite frank, it's resulted in some a little bit of love lost between TxDOT and local folks, particularly around one big project. But yeah, I just wonder if there's some way for us to go about thinking about how to increase funding, even if it's not for more bicycle and pedestrian projects, for projects that are just in general for safer streets, safer street design. So I don't know.
All right, other thoughts to add to the conversation?
Hi, it's Chelsea. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it ties into some of the earlier conversation about increasing competency and skill set with safe design and safe bike riding, is I know a lot of folks fall into that, interested but concerned cyclists. I wonder if there's an opportunity for this committee to help sponsor workshops or trainings to host smart cycling classes in different geographic areas around the state, or to maybe get some folks trained as cycling instructors to build that competency and confidence in different geographic areas.
This is this is Bobby. I agree with Chelsea. I have, we've had some issues of cyclists not obeying the laws, and then the motorists get upset at the cyclists, and it's a combination. Like here in El Paso, it's really bad as far as the motorists not respecting the cyclists. So it's a challenge. I just don't know, on the educating the public on safe driving. I also think that it's not just the motorists; it's also the cyclists and how they should respect, the rules of the road. And so that's where I would want to focus on. Well, at least, I'm sure others have the same issues in their respective communities, but that's really a major problem out here in El Paso.
Thanks, Bobby. Other comments? Edwin or Jeff or Rick or Trent?
This is Rick. I'd like a few comments. And I'd like to reiterate what Bobby said and what Chelsea said about bicycle education. I think one thing that we can do is maybe start with the kids in elementary school and middle high and high school. And as they develop in grades, that they get trained on more technical aspects of bicycle riding, maintaining their bikes, and learn how to fall so they don't get injured. Just the whole spectrum of safe bike riding and how to operate on the roadways. Another deal Bobby was talking about was cyclists are their own worst enemies, where they flaunt the law quite a bit, and I think the BAC or some entity such as it should take steps to start having these bike clubs and racing groups start obeying the traffic laws so we get more respect on the roads. Right now, we don't get respect because we flaunt the law, and other drivers basically tell us to get off the road because we're not obeying the laws to stay on there. I know when I was commuting to and from school, I'm retired now, but when I was commuting to and from work, I would obey the laws, and I would not have any issues with the other motor vehicles around me. But other folks that blow the stoplights, stop signs, they get honked at, and basically they're mistreated on the road. I have been mistreated on the roads, had things thrown at me and yelled to get off the road before, but that's far and few compared to others. So that's just my take on it. Just more education and started at a very young age, so it's ingrained in people's minds as they get older, instead of having a car-centric way of thinking and trying to be retrained riding a bike, because it just doesn't work well that way.
Hey Siri, call JJ.
This is Frank. I guess I have a question because I know that obviously we're looking at bicycle issues, but based on what we were told earlier today, we as a committee are seeming to move into a bike pedestrian committee. How much of that should we be thinking about itself?
Correct.
I'm sorry?
I said, yes, that's correct. So you're suggesting maybe we need to add more of those elements to the plan?
Hey JJ.
Well, yeah, I know there's a lot on our plate anyway, but if we are going to become a bike pedestrian committee, I mean, just be thinking about that.
What I got.
More instead of bike active transportation, I guess, incorporating all of those issues.
Yep. I agree. I think that's a great point, Frank. I think we need to look at ADA regulations, Americans with Disability. Most of my cities in DFW do not have ADA transition plans, which are required by federal law. So I'm sure it's in all of your regions as well. So we've had our training reviews by the feds, and they've asked if there's anything we can do to help enforce this federal requirement. There's no repercussion right now. So they asked us if we would withhold federal funding to make cities do ADA transition plans for pedestrians and folks with disabilities. And it's just, there at no level is it being really monitored. So I think whether enough cities don't know the importance of it or the requirements of it or how to do it, they're very expensive. I have a very small city that just did one for about $800,000. They're not cheap, but we have a lot of cities. And so thinking about more training in that area, I think is really important, especially for new construction and projects that are coming online, and then how to retrofit what you've got. I think that would be a good topic to maybe think about, the infrastructure piece for pedestrians. Other comments or questions?
I have a few comments. Hello.
Who's that?
This is Eddie. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I had a great conversation myself about 5 minutes ago, and then I realized I was on mute. So I have two things. So education, that is near and dear to my heart. That's piqued my interest. So I spent, I don't know, I've been riding there 35 years, so I spent about 5 to 10 years here working with the Austin Parks and Rec department and doing just that, educating kids. And I still run into some of these kids, which are grown adults now, that all still big advocates of safe bike riding. And being a member of multiple bike groups here, you know, I see the same things that y'all were talking about, unsafe practices, and it starts with the kids. And there are lots of groups out there to join. I'm currently working with an old friend from Austin Parks and Rec to try to get a group going here in the Round Rock, Cedar Park area to try to do some of that, because at Williamson County, we do try to add shared use paths and ADA compliant projects, many of them. We've added a shared use paths in the past 2 years on projects in Round Rock, Leander, right on the edge of the city of Austin. So there is things out there, and it starts with the kids and with us. We have to make the right decisions and ride like we know how to ride. I mean, it starts with us. And I think if you want to get out there and educate, there are many ways and groups to do that.
Thanks, Eddie. That's great. You know, right now you have to take a test to get a driver's license for a car, but no one requires that for a bicycle. And we just assume that everyone's going to know all the rules and the laws, and anybody can go buy a bike at Walmart and off they go. I do think maybe I've always thought we needed some sort of, even if it was an honorary test that people across the state could take, and maybe you tied that into like a passport system. The National Park Service has had huge results with this, and maybe there are trails all over Texas that we would encourage people to try out if you're visiting San Antonio or Dallas or El Paso or wherever you're at in the state. People may not be flying as much as they are nowadays. The amount of road trips has really increased for family vacations. Maybe there's some sort of TxDOT supported pass, but to even qualify for it, you have to take a road safety test or, something that, educates about roadway safety or things like that for bicyclists. And then on the flip side, we take driver's ed tests when we're 16, and I don't remember anything about bikes being on that test. So how to interact with motorists or cyclists or even pedestrians, other than don't hit them if they're in a crosswalk. So for years, we've been trying to figure out how to pierce into DPS. And so at my level or smaller levels, I think it's really hard to have that conversation. But if one state agency would work with another state agency to have those conversations, and materials were prepared and there could be optional modules, if there's a way to get into DPS driver's ed training or classes or even a question on the test, maybe that could have people thinking about the conversation. Just some ideas.
This is Clint.
Go ahead.
I don't want to be the naysayer, but I will. I don't personally think that education, at least what I'm reading in the strategic direction report, kind of it has some good ideas, but I feel like our power as the BAC is really in liaisoning with TxDOT and not so much with the local folks who are already doing a great job in education. I think we could maybe support in some ways, but if we do move in the direction of education, I would personally prefer if we kind of take stock of what's happening at the state level and maybe support rather than reinvent the wheel. I think it's really easy to get into some victim blaming with which I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know that for sure. With education, but I think we have a lot of power as the BAC in other areas that I would rather focus on. That's my opinion.
This is Frank, and also, I mean, I guess following what Clint's saying, we have at the state level we have Bike Texas, and at the national level we have the League of American Bicyclists that have certified instructors. Maybe there's a way we can either join or co-sponsor something to just get that information out there. The league has probably hundreds of certified instructors here in Texas, around the state. So maybe joining forces or having some kind of relationship. I know we already do, but kind of reinforcing that.
Frank, this is Chelsea. I agree. And I think a way that the BAC and TxDOT could be really helpful is focusing on like the smaller areas that may not have those resources currently to get the geographic distribution and kind of like an equitable distribution of those resources.
Absolutely.
I'm going to push back just a little bit, Clint, and that's the point of the conversation. So I think what's missing, though, in that conversation is the organization of it, right? So programs come and go and they run out of funding and then people don't do them anymore. And if you did a search right now, like I can't tell you the top 5 most popular bike training programs in DFW. And if I don't know, no offense, I'm not sure who does. Like they lose their volunteers, they lose their websites, they lose their funding, and there's no home that keeps them maintaining. And I know that some parts of the state do this better than Austin. Like I feel like, I think Austin does it well. I think there are other parts that don't really have this on the radar. Or I may have one of my 200 cities that really gets it, but then I got 100 cities with nothing. So I've paid for trainers because they're like, well, great, we'd love to do it, but we need the resources to do it. So if TxDOT put resources in that area or designated a program that everyone used statewide and we keep it for perpetuity, and so we're not paying people to recreate programs, which I think happens a lot. I think we go out and do procurements for new education and we're restarting again, and there's already 4,000 education programs that are out there. I don't know that we need all of that, but I think we've got to find one that really works, that everybody likes and agrees on, and this is a great panel of experts to think through that. And then I think, the state, of course, has to procure those things and decide how to develop the materials or do it in-house themselves. But then I do think there's got to be a role for that, but it's got to be something that maintains, because our own programs, I had $800,000 to do education, but that was 8 years ago. And then that money ran out. So it's going to be a continuous problem, but unless somebody has set their own stuff, and then I have different people setting different stuff. So it's complicated. I get it. And I know that there is education out there, but I still think there's just more people coming up that aren't connected to the new stuff as people come into Texas and don't know who to ask or where to go. Maybe it's, a different level, but I think there's some role there.
I think those are great points, Carla. And I totally agree with some level of, maintaining, having a place where people can go for information. And looking at the document, one of the goals or one of the recommended actions under the focus area is identifying and creating information. Right. And then I think like you're hitting right at what I guess this group created this strategic direction report a while ago. So I feel like I do see value in that. I just really don't want it to ring hollow, and especially with, I think it's important for us as the BAC to push that we preach, that a TxDOT practices what it preaches. And that's really it. I mean, I can point, there's something that happened a couple of months ago with an education campaign in Houston where TxDOT put up a billboard on one of their facilities that has no sidewalks and no pedestrian accommodations at their intersections. And the billboard, basically, it was very pedestrian victim blaming, and it said, you as a pedestrian need to make sure that you follow the rules. And there's literally no pedestrian facilities on this roadway. And so I worry about things like that. I just want to make sure that we're doing this in the right way and not a way that is.
And I want to just agree with Clint on that, because I know recently I was reviewing some CRISE data and looking at how the reports are written, and it's usually this kind of, the pedestrians at fault, the bicyclists at fault, but not any mention about whether or not there were safe facilities, whether or not, I just always feel on the law enforcement side, is there something that we could be doing more? And maybe the education isn't with the people, but using, officers, not to regulate and to cite individuals, but to say, okay, if someone's biking the wrong direction, hey, let me pull you over. There's these classes, check this out, and use that army of individuals to help with the education promotion in a way that the officers can see, okay, there's no sidewalk or there's no individual, maybe they're handing out maps or maybe they're making other kind of recommendations for safety on the individuals. That's just to chime in. I feel like when reviewing reports, and that's another thing, is like, are all officers aware of the reports, of the regulations, of the laws? Because I know when I was kind of not hit, but like driven off of the road, they were going to cite the motorist because I was going straight and I didn't use my hand signals and they turned right. But they told me, you need to be careful. And I was like, I'm wearing a white shirt. I have my red reflector, my white reflector. driving in a designated bike lane in the middle of the day. And the person you need to tell to be more careful is the motorist, not me. And I felt very defensive in that moment. And I'm, well aware of the the Texas Transportation Code. So it was interesting to have that conversation with an officer where I felt like I was more informed than him on that. So anyway, that's just a thought.
I would.
Who do we say it again?
Sorry, this is Jeff, and I've had persistent technical problems. Sorry, can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, and I actually missed a little bit after Clint's initial comment. I think I have to say I also need to be probably a voice of dissent here. I mean, while I absolutely agree with the fundamental importance of education and encouragement campaigns, I'm struggling to see how we at the state level can be, other than sharing resources and connecting local need, directing local need, providing some best practice guidance or connection to those who represent best practice in the realm of education. For me, our potency comes in standardizing design and policy at the state level. And I feel like I need to be on record just saying that even when it comes to education and encouragement programs, for me, our focus really should be at, how that is translated in policy at the state level, because I think that's where we have the most impact. I think if we start talking about, trying to transmit resources to programs at the local level, I feel like that there's just, to me, I don't see how we move the needle, honestly. So I guess I was a little hung up, and Clint's comment, I think it was Clint who was speaking previously about sort of a dissenting voice, and that resonated with me. Thanks.
If I'd like to make a comment on.
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
I agree with y'all that it's not the BAC's area to implement education, but I think it's our job to give guidance that there needs to be education, and we need to put that out there. And what I would like to propose or think is basically education is needed for the masses in general about bike operation, bike safety, and how to deal with bicycles when they're on the road. I think we ought to transfer that responsibility to something like the school system and teach these kids at a young age on how to ride a bike properly, how to walk properly, and in the formative years, and keep that training going throughout the different grades. So it gets instilled in their mind instead of just being trained one time and it's gone. They'll revert back to what the friends do, and have it reinforced maybe like in a physical education class or something like that. But I think that BAC does have the obligation of putting the best safety practices out there, and I think education should be one of the highest objectives.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Somebody else was about to speak?
Yeah, this is Mike in Austin.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up what I guess Trent and Ava and Jeff have been saying. We do have educational programs here in Austin and have for years for pedestrians and cyclists. And while they are important, I will say that we have no, and this is in our Vision Zero, policy report. I think there's no evidence that they've moved the needle on Vision Zero or fatalities even a little bit. Like anecdotally on some projects that we've worked on, I'm thinking of one way bicycle lane where there's just been this history of cyclists riding the wrong way in that bike lane, and there was a big push. We need to educate. This is causing safety issues at intersections. None of that was effective in any way, until we came in and we said, well, there's a reason people are doing this. We need a westbound bike lane, they need a safe option. That's what solved the problem, and I've seen similar things working with our TxDOT district here, Austin. There's a very serious fatality issue at I-35 at Capitol Plaza here in Austin. Almost every year there's a fatality there in that stretch of I-35, and TxDOT has been pushing educational efforts for essentially victim blaming pedestrians there, and saying like, here, take these high visibility jackets, or don't walk into traffic, which is definitely good advice to preserve your life. But the real issue is infrastructure. There's a reason people want to cross there, and they should be given a safe way to cross there. So all that is to say, I just generally agree with what a few of the folks here have said, that we should be getting at, what is the root cause of why people are doing this, and is it just that they're lacking the infrastructure they need to make safe decisions?
So the team that's been working over the past year on the design guidelines, I think, is getting at what a lot of you are saying, and I'm hoping will be a great tool and resource. This committee does not control money and resources. So what do you think we can do to help move that needle? And what would be the product or the deliverable, or what is it that we're going to try to say, and what does that look like? Do you guys have any suggestions?
Carla, this is Trent. And
Trent, go ahead.
Yeah. So, kind of in the same vein as what Mike just said, and certainly what Jeff and Clint were saying, I think of it like education is candles on the birthday cake, and really infrastructure and really safety, the safety facilitated through infrastructure would be really what the cake and icing is really about for me. Now, that being said, I think a deliverable that we struggle with in the rural part of where I live, if you talk about towns with less than 5,000 people, the ability to, most of these people would never be able to maybe dedicate the resource, or they're not even thinking about how do I create a wonderful pedestrian and bike safe environment in our small community that's poised for growth potentially, like we are here in East Texas. What I would say is, if we had, and I think the resource document, the strategic resource document that's being developed, that I think that's a good step in that direction. But if we had a way to equip these communities that are in need with a turnkey solution, just to make their lives easier, so they're not having to think. There's a plug-and-play system that all they have to do is then source the funding, and the support becomes, it's not just effort and support, it's just support. I find that to be very valuable as something this committee could do. While not controlling resources, we could offer solution, instead of saying, hey, you get this much money or you get that much. It's a solution-oriented endeavor that helps equip communities like where we live that have limited resource and really, frankly, limited limited thought leadership in terms of how this is going to drive value for the community. And we need to, if we made it easier for them, lowered the hurdle rate, I think it'd be a win-win in a big way.
Okay. Other ideas of what our mission will be? I've heard things that some of us are not as excited about pursuing, but what do you want to see come out of the committee for the next 2 years?
Carla, have you seen the chat? I'm just sorry.
Ava, I have not been keeping up with the chat. Do you want to recap some of it?
Oh no, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. There's quite a bit, but I'll let Clint speak. He was about to say something.
Okay.
No, all I was gonna say is I would love to spend a little bit more time with the strategic direction document, and I think there are several of the recommended actions that are worthwhile, and like I said, some under education as well. But I think I would need a little bit more. I want to spend some more time with it, I guess.
Are there any focus areas that need to be added? There are 6 right now. Are those the right focus areas, or do some need to fall off and others be added? And you may not be able to answer that right now, guys, but maybe that's something to think about as well.
Carla, I think that that would be excellent homework, and we will roll that into our email follow-up for further discussion. We certainly don't want to hinder any discussion. This has been amazing, great input. But I just wanted to go ahead and wrap this up. If there's anything further that you want to ask the group now, that's your choice.
Yeah.
But as far as we're concerned, we have gotten a wealth of information, and we'll definitely follow up by email, and we will have plenty to provide in a more deeper dive in April.
Okay, good. Do you want to mention really quick, you or Carl, the Menti link that you sent out? I believe it was for this exercise.
I think we got so much good discussion that is not necessary.
Okay, so tell people they don't necessarily need to fill that out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for your thoughts and feedback. Bizarrely, we're going to move back up to what was item number 2, the safety briefing. So the safety briefing is coming from Bonnie today, but she's got some interesting information to share with us. So Bonnie, go ahead.
All right. Let me put the agenda back up on the screen. All right, so for today's safety briefing, we wanted to do something a little bit different. We wanted to update you on the continued crash trends involving bicyclists and pedestrians statewide. As you all recall, in October, we presented some data from the early months of the pandemic, comparing several different available data sources. But we wanted to focus in and talk a little bit about the continued crash trends through November 2020, which was the last complete month available when we pulled the statistics. And we are finding that Texas has continued to see an increase in bicyclist fatalities of 20% in 2020 as of November, compared with January through November 2019, with a total of 73 bicyclists killed this year on our roadways, compared with 61 last year. Overall, through November, bicyclist injuries did continue to see a decline of 12% for suspected serious injuries and 18% for other injuries. For crashes that involve pedestrians, as of November, we were seeing a 6% increase in pedestrian fatalities through November 2020, compared with the same time last year. Again, there's a slight decline, 8% decline in suspected serious injuries for pedestrians and 26% decline in other injury types. So these numbers overall represent documented pedestrian and bicyclist crashes with motor vehicles through much of last year. A fuller picture would involve an understanding of total numbers of bicyclists or pedestrians on the road, where crashes were occurring, whether infrastructure was available, and we don't have that level of analysis available, so we're just providing this data. But while we are seeing a continued increase in bike and ped activity and fewer crashes overall for bicyclists and pedestrians, the trend in fatalities is incredibly concerning. And this is why the work that y'all are doing in the BAC is critical. So we plan to continue to update the BAC in future meetings on safety information like this in the future as part of our safety briefing. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Carla. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. Does anyone have any questions for Bonnie? All right. Well, then to get a little bit back on track, we're going to move to item number 3, the approval of minutes from the October 9th meeting. This is an action item, so I will be looking for a motion to approve the minutes. Or are there any suggested changes or modifications needed to the minutes? Let me actually ask that question first. All right, hearing none, I'm asking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Carla. This is Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby. And can I get a second?
I'll second. This is Trent.
Thank you, Trent. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed say likewise. All right, the motion passed. The minutes are approved. All right, now we're going to go to item 6, and Noah is going to talk to us about the discussion of TxDOT's 2021 Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Call for Projects. This is a possible action item to endorse this information that will be presented. Noah?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and pull this up. If I can. I think you have to pass me the ball, Bonnie.
I am trying to do that. Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'll be giving a presentation on the 2021 Transportation Alternative Call for Projects, which opened today. I'll start off with an overview of the program call, and then we'll talk about the evaluation criteria, and we'll talk about an opportunity, a survey that we'll be sending out to BAC members to get your feedback on how those evaluation criteria should be weighted. And then we'll also discuss potential action and discuss the BAC's feedback on the call for projects process. Like I said, the call for projects open today. The materials were posted onto our website this morning, so project sponsors can access those, the program guide and the preliminary application. The funding sources, we have about $10.5 million available, currently available for non-urban. Those are for projects and communities of 5,000 or less. But we're also opening the call up for anticipated future funding in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. We're anticipating either from extension of the FAST Act or a new transportation bill. We're anticipating about $13 million to be available for non-urban, and another 13 for small urban, which is 5,001 to 50,000. A conditional project list, it's a prioritized, fiscally constrained list of the highest scoring projects that will be recommended to commission for funding once funding becomes available. So we'll publish these lists at the conclusion of the call for projects, and then when funding becomes available to TxDOT and is appropriated to TxDOT, we'll move those projects forward with a recommendation to commission to take action for award on those projects. And we also had a conditional project list with our last call for projects, and those we have funding to award a number of those projects, and we'll be moving forward with that in the spring of this year. So who will the program, or who's eligible? Local governments, school districts, transit agencies, and other entities which are responsible for the transportation network in that community. 95 to 98% of the applications are from local governments, either cities or counties. And we do get some from school districts or other entities as well. What type of projects? The projects are for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, principally for transportation rather than recreation. Have a direct relationship to the surface transportation system and benefit the general public. And these projects will be located outside of the transportation management areas. They receive TA funding through the MPOs. And the funding is broken up into non-urban and small urban, non-urban less than 5,000 or less in population, and small urban 5,001 to 200,000. So we do have some differences from the TA program call in 2021 to our prior calls. Some of them are related to the TAC rule revisions, which were adopted and approved by Commission in December. And then some of them were adjustments we made to improve the call for projects. The first one, project sponsors are limited to 3 applications per sponsoring entity. We wanted the local communities to think about the priorities in their community and submit applications for the highest priorities in their community, and then also to limit the number that one community could submit, so that there's a diversity of types of communities in the pool of applications. In-kind contributions are no longer allowed as a local match option. But for projects in communities of 50,000 or less in population, they can request reimbursement of preliminary engineering activities, including cost for design and environmental documentation. So that's a big difference with this call than previous calls. Also, communities of 50,000 or less in population may be eligible to use state transportation development credits that allow for 100% federal TA funds to be applied to the project in lieu of a local match. So if the community is 50,000 or less and qualify based on economic criteria, then they would be eligible for these transportation development credits. There were also changes to the evaluation criteria, and we'll get into this in more detail and further on in the presentation. The timeline for the call for projects had opened today. Project sponsors, the deadline for the preliminary application, which is it's basically a 2-page application with a map of the project and also a budget. That would be due March 1st. TxDOT will review the project applications for eligibility, and project sponsors will attend district meetings to discuss the project and get feedback from district staff. And then on April 12th, will be notified if they qualify to move on for the next round. The second round, or second step 2, is the detailed application, which this is a much more extensive application that provide a lot more detail about the project and allow TxDOT to score the project. And then over the summer, TxDOT will review those applications. That the deadline for those detailed applications is June 14th. Over the summer, TxDOT will review those, and then in October, we are targeting a commission award for the available funding, and also publishing the conditional project list for the anticipated funding in FY23 and 24. The 2-step process I mentioned, it's a preliminary application. TxDOT reviews these applications for eligibility. The project sponsors meet with districts to go over the project and determine if it's a constructible and feasible project, or are there any major issues that the district sees with the project, and to review the budget. And the district can make suggestions on how to improve the budget estimate, or make suggestions about the project if there are some major issues with the project. And then the applicant will fill out a detailed application and submit by June 14th. And TxDOT will review the applications, evaluate them, and score them, and move a recommended list forward for award in October, and that's the target. And then also at the same time, publish the conditional project list. And the anticipated, or the available funding is for non-urban TA. The conditional project list would be for non-urban and small urban funding categories. We've scheduled and we'll be hosting some virtual meetings to go over the call for projects in detail and provide information about the program, but then also how to complete and submit a successful application. The dates are January 21st, 25th, and 27th, and there'll be virtual meetings. Available now on the BikePed webpage are the 2021 program guide, preliminary application instructions, and then an interactive map showing the TMA boundaries, transportation management areas, so that potential project sponsors can determine if they're eligible. If they're in a TMA, they would not be eligible. And then also it'll show if a community is eligible for the transportation development credits. We hope that that's a useful document. Also in the back of the program guide, there's a list of projects, there's a list of counties that are eligible for EDCP program, but then also a list of communities that are eligible for the transportation development credits. And then later we will be providing the workshop presentations, the detailed application and detailed application instructions, and then a frequently asked questions document. And those will all be available on the BikePed funding webpage. So the evaluation criteria, we held a stakeholder workshop in May of 2019 with mid-size NPOs and TxDOT, PTN, and district TA coordinators. We reviewed the evaluation criteria and measures, and the criteria and measures were identified based on TxDOT's mission, goal, and strategic plan, past TxDOT TA program calls. That was sort of the base that we worked with. But we also reviewed other our MPO and other state DOT TA program materials to see what criteria are being used in other areas. And then we discussed those criteria and modified them, and went through an exercise to establish weights for those criteria. The criteria weights will be based on the BAC input that we receive from a survey that we'll send out to you. It'll be a combination of BAC input, the workshop survey results, and then TxDOT's TA program needs. TxDOT TA program, because there's a 3-year time limit on the federal fund from when TxDOT receives it to when it needs to be obligated, TxDOT tends to put additional weight on project readiness. So that's kind of one of the key criteria that we we want projects that are ready and we feel can successfully meet that 3-year obligation window. So this is a brief description of each of the categories. When we send the survey to BAC members after this meeting, we'll provide a more detailed criteria description. But for the purposes of the presentation, we have 6 overall categories. One of the categories, demand, is for larger communities, the small urban category. The other 5 are for both non-urban and small urban. Safety, demonstrate need for safety improvements, project improve safety for non-motorized users, connectivity and accessibility, connecting to destinations of interest, supporting multimodal connections, eliminating barriers, and supporting long-distance bicycle infrastructure, community support and planning. We want projects that demonstrate community support that are linked to transportation plans. And then we consider small communities with limited planning resources as well. Project readiness, detailed construction cost estimates, past project performance, and meeting the established design criteria. Those are all items that we look at. And then geographic equity, improving mode choice in underserved communities. And then demand for small urban, improved access to higher density residential and employment centers. So with that, wanted to open it up for discussion. Like I said, we'll be sending out a survey either later today or beginning of next week. We may revise this due date if we send it out at the beginning of next week. But it's a survey to review the criteria and provide feedback on how those criteria should be weighted. And this item was listed as an action item, and that was to provide the opportunity for the BAC if they wanted to take action to support the process that's been laid out in the presentation. That would be something that they could do with the action being added to the agenda item. So with that, I will open it up. I've been talking for a good solid 20 minutes and welcome any questions or comments.
Great. Oh, sorry. And I was about to ask, are there any comments or questions for Noah?
So sorry. I just wanted to say, I just really quickly looked at the eligibility map that y'all made, the interactive one, and it's so easy to use. I remember the last call for projects. It was harder for me to understand who was eligible and not. So great job on that. It is really straightforward.
All right. Any other questions for Noah or comments?
Should we take action on this before the workshops? I saw that the survey right here says January 22nd, but the first workshop is January 21st.
So the action is to support if we want to take action, is to support the information that was laid out here today. The survey is just to get people's feedback on the criteria, and that will not come back to the committee, is my understanding.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to support.
All right, I've got a motion from Ava. Do I have a second?
Frank, seconds.
Thank you, Frank. All in favor say aye.
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 And
Aye.
the more, thank you. And the more important one is if any opposed, please indicate likewise. All right, thanks everybody. So good luck on the call for projects, Bonnie and Noah and Carl. I know that's fun times ahead. And then everybody has the link in the PowerPoint presentation to take the survey, I believe, or we're going to be sent a survey. Say that one more time.
We'll send the survey in an email.
Okay.
The survey link. So we'll send everyone an email shortly, either later today or at the beginning of next week.
Okay, and you're asking for that by next Friday, but I'm sure earlier wouldn't hurt your feelings.
Yeah, and like I said, if we end up sending that out at the beginning of next week, we can push out that January 22nd date. So
right.
we'll provide the information in the email.
Okay, sounds great. All right, with no further discussion, our next item is item 8. Our very own Ms. Eva Garcia is going to present to us on the Rio Grande Valley's active transportation efforts and everything that they've got going on in her neck of the woods. Ms. Eva, take it away.
Awesome, thank you. I don't see a share content. It's grayed out for me. I don't know who can continue.
Let me transfer the ball to you.
Thank you. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So especially for our new members, sorry I wasn't here to introduce you. Oh, actually, I think, did I pick up? Oh, I'm sorry. I have the wrong PowerPoint up. I will use this file here. Sorry about that. So my name is Eva Garcia, and I am the newly hired bike ped planner for the RGV MPO. And so I wanted to talk about, especially for our new members, a little bit the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, and some of the health disparities that we're facing here. And so I guess for this, basically the Rio Grande Valley is on the border. It consists of 4 networks. I'm sorry. I wanted to get, there we go. So based on our population data, we have, significantly different demographics and challenges that other areas in Texas don't usually face. We have the highest poverty rates in the state. And in addition to that, we have severe health issues. 80% are either overweight or obese. 1 in 3 people are diabetic. And that's significant because it's higher than the rest of Texas and higher than the rest of the nation. And actually, the nation is projected to be 1 in 3 people diabetic with the year 2050. And so we were already there about 10 years ago. In addition to that, we have other health challenges. We have the highest rates of amputation due to diabetes in the state. 60% of our adult population is uninsured. We have high rates of cardiovascular disease, cancer, liver, kidney, and other infectious diseases. And so that kind of keeps us in poverty. And we have, digital, we have a digital divide. We are the city, well, Brownsville, where I'm from, is one of like the least connected cities to in the nation. And I know I struggle with keeping up with emails and just because I don't always have access, and sometimes it's just challenging to download or get information. And really the pandemic has spotlighted those challenges and really been a struggle. And with our health disparities, we've really lost a lot of lives through the pandemic. And so that has been a significant impact for us. And so, oh, I just realized that. Okay, cool. So in addition to that, back in 2016, Cameron County, one of 4 counties in the Valley, adopted the Active Transportation Plan. And that plan proposes 428 miles of infrastructure. 2017, we did an economic impact study that looked at building 291 miles of trails in the region. And we found that could potentially put in more jobs in our area, about $70 million in annual spending by out-of-county visitors. And then by looking at, in the city of Brownsville, people who live near trails exercise 22% more. We projected that this developing this infrastructure could provide a $6 to $12 million savings from healthcare costs to our community. And so that was really significant and something that we wanted to do. Shortly after our economic impact study, we became one of Rails to Trails Conservancy's 9 Trail Nation projects. And so when this happened, the Rails to Trails Conservancy, a national nonprofit, if you're not familiar with them, they got funding to hire a project manager, a program manager. And so I was hired, left the city of Brownsville to become the project manager for Cameron County. And through my time with RTC, we developed different working groups to implement the active transportation plan. And this included a marketing group with the development of an interactive web map, a research group with the intention to kick off a regional bike ped count data program. That is still underway. We have changed locations. We're still executing MOUs. I think the last 2 MOUs with the municipalities get executed this month or next month. And then for research with our health partners, they're looking at access to trails through the Brownsville Housing Authority and how putting public and affordable housing along trail networks can improve the quality of life and how that impacts the health of the individuals living in that area. And then for the United States bicycle route, our plan did propose 2 routes. One is the USBR 55 route, and then a spur of that would be the USBR 255. And this would be a giant on-street loop around Cameron County. And so we did some presentations. I haven't solidified letters of support, and I really need to working with our FAR district office and our state TxDOT to understand and better understand how we get the approval process, what data is required for a submittal to AASHTO along that. And then we even have Texas paddling trails that came out of the active plan, and that's with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. But I am now with the RGV MPO, the Rio Grande Valley. This was just formed October 1st of 2019. What happened while I was with the Rails to Trails Conservancy is that 3 MPOs, Brownsville MPO, it's a TMA, Huntington San Benito MPO was a smaller MPO, and then Hidalgo County MPO, another TMA, merged to create this MPO. And so they spent the first year really doing a staff study and eventually contracted to develop 3 plans together. And so we took a comprehensive approach. We started developing the MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Transit Development Plan, and the Active Transportation Plan. So I was hired about 4 months ago, leaving the Rails to Trails Conservancy. The position is still available for a project manager for the Caracara Trails, if you know anyone. But now I'm working with Hidalgo County and Cameron County to implement the active transportation plan. And similar to the active plan that I talked about earlier, our goals are to increase connectivity and mobility, make sure that it is accessible for users of all ages and abilities across the region, and to really improve health and support our local economies here. And so we do have a work plan, short, medium, long term, depending on the area, planning and design, policies and program, education encouragement, safety, and other active tourism initiatives. And so this is the update that I really wanted to talk about. It's less of an update and more of what a work plan. What I'd like to be working on and implementing is this United States bicycle route. If you're unfamiliar with our bicycle tourism trails study, it's part of that study to implement this on a state level. And so hopefully through this committee, we can figure out how best to do that. Project-wise, I really wanted to showcase a lot of the investment that's happening here in our region. The Bronzotillos Fresno's Connect project would be an extension of a 9-mile historic battlefield trail in Brownsville. We've just completed and did a virtual ribbon cutting for this extension right here. This was privately funded with health organization, Valley Baptist Legacy Foundation. And the same organization, Valley Baptist Legacy Foundation, funded this portion in the city of Los Fresnos. This green area here will be funded in the next couple of years. Actually, I think they're executing the AFA for this connection here, Transportation Alternative Program funding. Utilizing our drainage infrastructure, we're hoping to transform our area to be more accessible and provide more opportunities for recreation and exercise and transportation, of course. In addition to that, we were awarded some federal land access program funding for the Bahia Grande Trail. It is a proposed 21.5-mile trail that would connect National Park Service land to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land. This Bahia Grande unit is part of the Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge, but is currently not open to the public, just because it hasn't gone through the federal approval for activities yet. But the U.S. Fish and Wildlife is working on that, and the FHWA is leading this feasibility study to figure out how we can best connect the cities of Laguna Vista, Port Isabel, and Los Fresnos and Brownsville through that other project I just mentioned. Again, this is the Bahia Grande unit that's currently inaccessible. These roads are solely for maintenance purposes for the rangers that work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but we're hoping to provide more amenities. Oh, and then one addition is the county is working on a South Texas Ecotourism Center, and so this would have a direct access to the unit as well. Here we have another proposal to connect the cities of San Benito to the city of Harlingen using the Arroyo Colorado here. The blue line would be a paddling trail that connects all the way to South Padre Island. And so this is existing trail and an existing trail. Already funded is the extension toward Dixieland Park, these baseball fields and this kind of golf course area. But hopefully, I think the cities are interested in applying for either the statewide call or the local MPO call for TA funding to further this connection. And here, using these waterways, we're hoping to transform the area again. In Hidalgo County, which is an area I'm still becoming more familiar with, we do have this Precinct 2 hike and bike trail. It's partially constructed already and connects the cities of San Juan, FAR, and then a major metro area, the city of McAllen. This one does include some tunnels, and my understanding, we're very connected to our drainage infrastructure being a river delta. And so we're utilizing all of that right of way in those easements to further our bike ped connectivity. And so I just wanted to keep it short and sweet for now and ask if there were any questions for me regarding this project.
Thanks, Ava. That was great. You guys are doing a lot of really cool stuff. Any questions for Ava about what she presented? I have one, if I can. First of all, welcome to the MPO Bike Ped Planning world. It's fun times all around. Feel free to call anytime. I wanted to ask about the paddling trails that you guys mentioned. So those are actually identified in your transportation plan. So how do those interact with your bike trails? Or we've had some people come to us recently requesting more involvement with paddling trails, and we're not really sure how to bring them into the mix. So how has that been handled for you guys?
Yeah, let me go back and share my screen again. Let me see, did I do that right? Here we go. So the way that we did it was through not the MPO's active transportation plan, but through this initial one county plan. And again, at the time, Cameron County had 2 MPOs. So this did get the support of the region. But here is the map of that proposed network. And so in blue is that on-street US bicycle route. that we're hoping to implement. Red is the off-street network, and here is the paddling trails that you see along our Laguna Madre. This, again, it's really the way that AASHTO designates the United States bicycle route is done through Texas Parks and Wildlife. And so there are some accessible requirements. There has to be paddling access or entry, parking, that kind of stuff every 4 to 10 miles, I believe. And then they have recommendations, they being Texas Parks, for, kayak launch sites and different kind of amenities, kiosks, and they do help with that if you look further into the program. But I don't have it on me. There are these kind of trailheads that would link the routes better together. I'm so sorry for going back and forth. But you kind of see here our on-street paddling and off-street, on-street, and paddling systems come together here. They connect again over here and over here. And so being a river delta, you can kind of see we have a lot of waterways. A lot of the cities are interested in developing their own. But for the region itself, this would be kind of the highlight, the big fish, if you want to call it that, connecting a world birding center in South Padre Island to the one in Harlingen. So again, the way that we set it up was like if we had an advisory committee, we have a working group that specifically meets with those that are impacted along this area. So if you're from Los Indios, you're likely not in that working group. But those groups are doing just kind of what you do with basic planning, right? Geospatial database, collecting information about width, depth, public access, private access points, other issues like sensitive seagrasses is what we have, those environmental concerns that you would assess. But it kind of just goes along with it. And it is considered active transportation for our region sake. But this hasn't merged into the Hidalgo County side, although they are interested. And there's been some talk about opening the Rio Grande River for kayak access, but that's a little above my pay grade right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I've got a question, Ava.
Go ahead.
Specifically about, I guess the slide you're on right now, the U.S. bicycle route. In the past in Austin, we've been curious about this. Adventure Cycling will occasionally come to us and ask us about signing the 90 bicycle route through Austin, and we are interested in that. But our understanding is it's kind of like a state or AASHTO decision to make it official. Have y'all looked into that? That might be a staff question as well. Has there ever been any statewide discussion about adopting these the way that Florida, Arizona, and others have?
I'll just say on a regional level, we have gotten support from our municipalities here. And so we're just, because of the pandemic, things had kind of been on pause, plus my transition to the new, to this new position. But regionally, we're trying to get FAR district support, but I know that there would have to be some kind of process in place. And I think, bring that up in the chat for a potential activity is how can we implement this? So I'll let anyone at the state level speak to that.
This is Bonnie. And we did have discussions with Eva on USBRS 55, I believe it was. We do have the process outlined in the Bicycle Tourism Trails study, so you can refer back to that. We do not have any designated routes here in Texas, but we are open to working with local communities if they wish to lead an effort to designate a route. We are definitely open to working with y'all. It does require sign off by the highest levels of TxDOT. So we would just need to receive a proposal from the local entity and work through the paperwork with you. No commitments today, but we are willing to work with y'all.
For future reference, it's on page 53 of the bicycle tourism trail study. Because now at this level, I think at the MPO level, we're looking back at it and trying to pick that back off of the shelf.
Thanks, Bonnie. Enigma.
So page 53, if you want to learn about the process.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much. We appreciate learning more about that part of Texas. Okay, one of our last items is going to be item number 9. We're going to get, I'm going to go around and ask for updates from committee members of local happenings or other issues that you'd like to bring up that are occurring within your part of Texas that you want to make others aware of. Let me start with Bobby. And Bobby, anything going on in El Paso that you want to share with the group related to bicycle and pedestrian activities?
Well, nothing much has changed since the last quarter, but because most of the CID or the capital improvement projects have been temporarily placed on hold. So hopefully in 2021, we'll see those projects get moved up. On a positive note, we've seen obviously a significant increase in outdoor activity, which includes walking, biking, running, which I'm sure most of you have seen in your respective communities as well. And maybe going back to something Bonnie mentioned earlier about fatalities, it could be, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see the stats on this, but, maybe impatient drivers, possibly inexperience of new cyclists. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'd like to see data behind that to see what exactly is happening. But all is well, considering COVID. But other than that, it's all good here in El Paso.
All right, thanks, Bobby. Chelsea, anything to share with what's happening in Waco?
Hi. Well, we have 2 projects that are either starting construction or will be starting soon. So one is the Elm Avenue Streetscape project, which was a TA award a couple of years ago in the city of Waco. That was recently let, and the project will be about 24 months. And it's a really big deal for our region because East Waco has a history of underinvestment. And ever since word got out that the Streetscape project was funded and it was happening, and then the city of Waco did a model block about a year and a half ago, there's been a lot of new development and investment in the area, one of which is a new bank branch, TFNB, opened in East Waco on Elm Avenue, and it's a big deal because the last known bank in East Waco closed in 1915 or 1916. So it's been about 100 years since that community has had a bank branch. So that's a really big deal. Another project worth highlighting is Washington Avenue, again in the city of Waco. It's a conversion of a one-way street to a two-way street, and it's going to include buffered bike lanes. That was really important to some of the businesses along that corridor in downtown, and the community voiced a lot of support. So we're happy to see that the city is kicking that off soon. So that's all I got. Thanks.
All right, thanks for sharing about those projects. Clint, what about the Houston area?
Sure, yeah. Lots of stuff going on. I think at the city of Houston level, one of the biggest things in the recent months has been the adoption of the Vision Zero Action Plan, which is awesome. Moving forward on that, and then City of Houston is continuing to complete and finalize a lot of our new high comfort bikeways that they've been working on for the past couple of years, and it's really coming into a nice network in the city's core. And then following the success of those bikeways, we've seen a lot of other entities from our TxDOT's to county officials. I wouldn't say jumping on the bandwagon, but I would say maybe more like realizing the importance and success of those bikeways. And it's been incredible to see. We've got multiple planning studies underway for bikeways in new parts of town that really haven't seen much investment over the last few years, investment ever in high comfort bikeways. So it's really awesome to see the momentum of those original investments go on to spur even more things. And one of the ones that I'm really excited to see in our Montrose neighborhood, which is our historic, one of our historic neighborhoods. It's got a tighter street grid. We've got the TERS is funding 2 bikeways there right now as the beginning of their bikeway investments, and they are not your standard high comfort type bikeways with a protected bike lane. They're neighborhood streets that are relatively high traffic, but don't have a lot of room for any specific, protected bikeway or standard bikeway treatment. So the designs are going to be more neighborhood bikeway with hopefully some specific kind of new to Houston intersection treatments that will be cool to see. I think it will be the first of its kind of safe street neighborhood bikeway concept in Houston. I'm really hoping that it turns out well and that the neighborhood likes it, because it could be a good path for a lot of our other smaller streets in the city. And then we've also got the last thing I would mention is just we've got a lot of new, fresh leadership in Houston. That's really exciting. We've got a new leader of Bike Houston, our advocacy organization, Joe Catrufo, that came from Transportation for America. And then also Veronica Davis is new to Public Works, and she has a ped bike background specific to equity. And I'm so excited to see what they do, bringing fresh ideas. So that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Eddie, what about you?
So most of my focus has been in Williamson County over the last, through the pandemic. So a lot of stuff going on there. We passed the new bond, and with that, there was also a $100 million or whatever bond for Parks Group. And so with that, there's been more design projects with the bike and ped facilities. In the past 9 months, we've completed 2 projects with the shared use paths that increase the connectivity in Round Rock and between some major developments in the more rural area of Leander. That's a bonus. That's positive for us. So we've been working with the county and also about maybe getting some increased funding through Campo, whatnot, for more of this similar facilities. So anyway, some of this information today will be good about the call for projects. I can communicate that with the county. So been busy with mainly county projects. Oh, and I got a new bike. That was awesome. So great for me.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for sharing. Ava, anything you want to highlight?
I think I highlighted more some of my projects during my presentation, but that's basically it. Hopefully kicking off the bike ped count program data is my priority right now. And then really hoping to gather everything for the USBR application. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Frank, what about you in the Laredo area?
Sure. Well, first of all, Ava, thank you for the presentation and congratulations. That's a great position to be in. Very exciting time for you in the Valley. And so here on the border, nearby, neighboring border, we're really excited to be able to report that our Laredo Webb County MPO has completed our active transportation plan. And I think I reported like in earlier meetings, that started out as a bike plan that was then of course extended out to a pedestrian plan. So we're incorporating not only our cyclists, but our pedestrians, personal mobility devices, and bringing in our mass transit system. Here it's called El Metro. And so that plan is going to our MPO and our city council this coming February for adoption. And once it is adopted, it will be added as an amendment to our Viva Laredo comprehensive plan that we worked on a few years back. So we're really excited to be at this point and get working toward implementation. That's what I got.
All right, thanks so much. Jeff, anything to share from the Corpus Christi region?
Hi. Yeah, we are making a little bit of slow progress in our urban core. have some one-way to two-way street conversions that are happening that should enhance mobility overall and allow us to implement some of the bike boulevards that have been on the books for a while. You know, the other piece of that, of course, the signage and striping or pavement markings. You know, it yet to be determined when those pieces will be on the ground, but at least we'll have sort of the grid bones in place. Also have some planning for a couple of different but connected destinations downtown in terms of placemaking and some multimodal connectivity between them. So, you know, a little bit tangential to the bike plan that we've done over the last several years, but trying to reconfigure at least our urban core in a way that generally supports non-vehicular mobility. That's about it for now. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot. Mike, what about you?
Hi, all. In Austin, we are lots of stuff going on. We're in the middle of rewriting and adopting a revision of our transportation criteria manual. It seems like at all levels of government are kind of rewriting their guidance right now, from AASHTO to like TxDOT's roadway design guide. And at the local level, yeah, we're rewriting our manual that is less of an update and more of a starting from scratch, really. And it we'll have a lot of good things for pedestrians and cyclists, including protected bikeways on you know, collector and up type of streets by default for new or redesigned streets. So that will be great. I was excited and interested to hear from Clint that they are kicking off neighborhood bikeways in Houston, because we're doing the same here in Austin. It's a typology of project that we have kind of been slow on, I would say, in the past, compared to other things like protected bike lanes. So that's going to be exciting in this next year or two to see how those land. And they feel like kind of a win-win for us, because these neighborhood streets, you know, the neighbors are wanting slow speeds anyway. So getting a connected bikeway without really impacting those residences should be a great thing. And finally, we had a couple of big propositions on the ballot in November. Prop A passed. That was transit, 2 rail lines, a bunch of rapid bus lines, and a tunnel downtown. That was like $7 billion. That was huge. And Prop B more directly impacts our work. That's more $460 million for more local mobility, like sidewalks, urban trails, and bikeways, which we are working to staff up and make sure we can meet our 7-year deadline to get all of that work on the ground.
All right, well, thank you. You guys can do it. 7 years, you got this. Rick, what about San Angelo area? Anything you want to share with the group?
Oh, just finishing up some sidewalk projects on some of our main arterial roads. They're retrofitting them in, so that's a good deal there. And they're working on another road up on the north side, completely rebuilding it. So hopefully have better accessibility up there. And that's about it.
Okay. Trent, anything from the Tyler or East Texas area?
Yeah, thanks, Carla. So unfortunately for us, it's a bit of slow going as well. And city government MPO is just kicking off their first meetings. We haven't had meetings, I think, in quite some time. So MPO is going to be back engaged, and I'll be involved in that. And then if you remember, I think it was in the spring, we had an awareness campaign. Almost a year ago, we had an awareness campaign that we kind of sourced and developed. Our big kick campaign. But I'll have as city government gets back involved, we have a whole. The mayor is actually a cyclist for fun. He's not competitive by any stretch, but I think we'll have a very interested audience in trying to push an agenda for the East Texas constituents. So look forward to the next update.
Very cool. Thanks, Trent. Trent, I was going to mention, in our region, we have a couple of mayors that are avid cyclists, and they do once a month cycling with the mayor events. And they're organized by city staff, and people are invited just to come out and ride different trails or on street with the mayors of those cities. And it's been really great to see the elected officials interacting with the public and then getting out using the infrastructure. And it's a great way for people to communicate needs and new projects and that type of stuff. Just an idea. Not sure if your mayor's there yet, but wanted to pass that along. Trent, you've cut out. Say that again.
Like the that had was March 20th, and it was our big local bike race, and the mayor.
Trent, I'm sorry we didn't get all of that. I'll send you I'll send you some information on it just as a FYI if you're interested. All right.
Carla,
So
was
I think I'm the
saying
last one to go in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. We've been trucking along. We just completed three sets of Trent, I got part of that and we lost you again. Is it just me or others having difficulty hearing Trent?
I'm certain it's me.
Yeah, we're having.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Carla, I just said it was a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Trent. We had a series of 3 two-day workshops with the Federal Highway Administration on designing for pedestrian safety, and we did those all virtual. And I will say that we were a little skeptical of how those workshops would turn out, but they were very well attended. All 3 sessions had about 60 to 80 attendees, and there was a lot of interaction in the chat and in the conversation and kind of how it was broken up. So the modules were very well received by, I think, the engineering and planning community. So we're excited to see that online learning can still work because the exercises were always the most popular parts of that training. So I think everybody sort of bobbed and weaved pretty well, and it turned out good. We also just finished, we've had a grant for the past couple of years from the Federal Transit Administration to look at a couple of different things around our rail stations. We have about 74 rail stations in DFW, and so we took a grouping of those, 28, and we did a couple of different things, but one of them was routes to rail analysis of where we were missing sidewalks and bike infrastructure and where there were safety concerns. And then as part of that study, we advanced 15% design engineering for about 5 of the stations in various locations. So we wrapped up that study, and then we were successful in going to our policy board and getting some money allocated to 2 of the 28 stations. And those were 2 of the 5 that had some of the preliminary engineering. So, which has led us to some really interesting work on a propensity to bike and walk map that we're looking at in our region. I know some others have done this, but as we start prioritizing these infrastructure investments, whether it's safety or EJ or ridership or a whole host of things that we're looking at sort of the analytics of what makes sense as we sort of put a program of packages together and sort of just try to take bites of this over time and partner with our various cities and counties and transit agencies to implement this. So that's been pretty exciting to get an early win there. We recently wrapped up, we had several inter-jurisdictional studies going on between cities. So we had one in the south between 2 cities called Midlothian and Waxahachie, maybe you've heard of those. Another one, we have a regional trail that will get you from Denton, Texas down to Dallas. And there's one critical gap in the middle that is adjacent to rail. So we hired a consultant. There's 5 cities, 2 counties, and 2 transit agencies in the mix in this kind of no man's land. So brought all those folks together to look at alternatives and the routes, and that's been a pretty successful study that's concluded. And then we have a third project in the city of Fort Worth. It's called Bomber Spur, where it creates a continual loop within the city of Fort Worth around our Trinity Trail system, which is exciting to see. So all of those are done. And now the next part, of course, is the partnerships and the implementation and sort of how you start taking bites away from those projects to get them built over time. We had been tracking TxDOT's work on looking at pedestrian safety and high priority crash corridors. And TxDOT had looked at some work in the Dallas-Fort Worth, or some areas in the Dallas-Fort Worth that we had requested as part of a research project, which is concluded and was pretty cool results. And so we took that and tied it into a regional pedestrian safety plan that we've developed for DFW and used their methodology, tweaked it a little bit, and have come up with our highest crash corridors for pedestrians within our region, our 50 top corridors, if you will. And so we're going to be launching procurements this summer to go out and do roadway safety audits for several of those locations. So that work is really going to provide a guide map for us of where we want to prioritize some pedestrian improvements as part of that regional plan, which is exciting because pedestrian issues are a struggle from a regional. The broader your geography, the harder regional impacts or pedestrian impacts are to see, because sometimes they're so localized or there seems to be no pattern. But this work was pretty interesting. That research product that the state developed, working with UTEP, actually looks at sort of a gridded network through GIS of your entire roadway network and starts drawing correlations. And if you guys haven't seen a copy of that, maybe Bonnie and Noah can send it out. It was really instrumental for us and gave us a roadmap. And then finally, looking at our pedestrian safety issues, we learned a lot of stuff about who were our people that were dying. And they tended to be male. They tended to be over 50. They tended to almost all, I would say 70% of them were happening at night, which we thought, but we couldn't prove. And so we have a lot of data that came out of that because every crash record for the last 5 years, which was a lot in our region, was reviewed. And so our elected officials decided to re-engage one of our safety campaigns, Look Out Texans. And so we're going to be launching that again this spring, which is cool. So a lot of stuff going on. We've talked about before with COVID, bike ped numbers have been crazy. We show our elected officials every month. Freight's down, airports are down, toll roads are down, but bike and ped has been steady at 30 to 40% increase from what it was in previous years. So it's getting a lot of attention. And they are, thankfully trying to get us tools and resources to keep people safe out there. All right, so the item number 10, or that wraps it up for item number 9. For item number 10, I want to mention that for public comment, those are due to the virtual format of the meeting. Public comments may be submitted by email to bikeped@txdot.gov by January 25th, and those will be included as part of the meeting record. Any questions about that? All right, so our final item is discussion of agenda items for future BAC meetings. So this is our first meeting of the year, and we have a couple more of these that will come up in 2021. Are there any specific topics or things that BAC members want to see brought back for more discussion or education or information throughout the rest of the year? And then this is going to help Bonnie and Noah and Carl sort of start thinking about agendas and programs and special speakers and all that kind of stuff. Any ideas that you guys want to throw out there?
Hello, this is Eddie.
Eddie, go ahead.
So I see how we easily can get wrapped around the axles on like education issues, and I could talk for hours on the details of how to build stuff. But those are very important topics, and maybe not, it isn't the best venue to have all of us on there going back and forth on them. So are those both things that could be like special committees that meet once a month, if not the whole group, and talk about just those things and come up with ideas? or is that beyond the scope of this group? Because I had some kind of action items on reviewing some TxDOT standards, and I did that, but I'm not for sure, other than just forwarding it to Noah or somebody, how we communicate that information.
Eddie, let me repeat what I think I heard and make sure I got it right. So you're thinking that if folks are interested in education and there sort of seems to be a spread of what that looks like, that maybe there needs to be a subcommittee to talk about more specifics about education, or to inventory education, or look at the different things and bring those back to the committee. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. When we were doing the committee, everybody talk about what's going on in the area. Everybody loves their area and knows what's going on. That's the perfect forum right there. Each area represents all of Texas. Could say, here in our area, this group is doing this for education, and just get the ideas out there, and then take that information and say, oh, we could do this also in Laredo or whatever. It seems like, we could talk for hours here, which we shouldn't be doing, but maybe we could meet separately and just dedicate an hour to talking about education issues, and everybody do their homework prior to that and come up with it. And the same thing about TxDOT standards and building. Those are both things I could talk a lot on, but yeah, that's what I was saying, having a separate group for it.
Cool. Yeah, I will leave it to the mechanics of it to the TxDOT staff, but I actually really like the idea if we did sort of a round robin of everybody gives 5-10 minutes on what are the education programs within your part of Texas, or what resources are people using, or, I would love the state to present on that. I think everybody knows different things about different cool, campaigns or programs or things like that, but then that's a lot of information and knowledge sharing we could do. And whether that's a special session or a subcommittee or a presentation at just one of the BAC meetings, the how, I'll turn it over to TxDOT and see if they have any suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Other ideas or topics that people would like to see come back?
This is Frank. I guess I have a question first, based on what we were told again earlier today about transitioning into a bicycle pedestrian committee. And I know that it's a comment. So what is the timeline on that in terms of it actually, I guess, becoming official? Or
yeah, so Eric had said the commission will approve it in February. So when we come back in April, we will be that will have changed our mission statement, if you will.
So then, based on that, I think some future agenda items are for us, obviously, to how we transition to that.
Okay.
Things that might be helpful for us, educationally. I think we're familiar with bicycle and pedestrian issues, but more specifically for our committee, like what does that mean for us, and just relating to that idea of the transition.
Okay, I think that's great. I would tag on to that. I think we need to look at our name. Does that need to be updated as part of that conversation as we've expanded our role? I think that would be a great topic, Frank. Thank you.
So, Carla, this is Eric.
Hi, Eric. Go ahead.
The rules that are out for comment changed the name of the committee to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Oh, well, there you go. So new title for April.
So there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if you want to comment on the name, you have until January 25th.
Thank you for letting us know that, Eric. I forgot that part.
And just in case anyone is wondering as well about committee composition, there has been some questions asked by commissioners on when and how pedestrian interests would be accommodated in committee membership. So the rules keep the size of the committee at 11 members. Well, let me put it this way. The rules do not specifically set the size of the committee. The next sort of regularly scheduled series of appointments comes up in August of 2021. And so barring any interest before that, that would be the first opportunity for the commission to look at the composition of the committee and decide to make some appointments then that would bring a pedestrian element into the committee. At a minimum, the rules require the committee to have at least one individual representing the interests of the community of folks with disabilities. So, and the only thing I'll add to that is that the commission can, through a minute order action, they can decide to add members to the committee. There's a ceiling on how large advisory committees can get, and I think I want to say it's 25. And a couple of commissioners have asked about the timing of new appointments to the committee to bring that pedestrian focus. And what we have told them is that they can introduce any time in a minute order additional appointments that would increase the size of the committee. So I've not seen any I've not been given any direction to do that. But it's possible in conjunction with adoption of the final rules that topic will come up again, and we'll certainly update the committee on that in April. Sorry for the long explanation, but that's where that stands.
All right, thanks, Eric. Other ideas or topics that folks are interested in that they'd like to see over the next year?
Carla, this is Clint. I wanted to second kind of what you had said earlier about the ADA transition plans. That's something that I know what you were saying about the Dallas area. Houston has a lot of municipalities that still haven't done that, and I don't know enough about it to be able to speak on it intelligently. So I would love to learn if we can in this forum.
Okay. I would like a presentation on the neighborhood bikeways that you guys talked about that are coming up online in Houston and Austin, and just how those are working and being incorporated. I think that would be a really cool topic for folks.
This is Jeff. I totally agree.
Yeah, I like both of those topics.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that. Maybe it could be joint with Clint and I.
A tag team, that'd be awesome. I would like, there was a TxDOT project with a consultant that had been hired to look at priorities for the regional tourism routes. I would like an update on that. I think it's been some time since we've heard the status of that or the final outcomes. So maybe that could come back to the committee this year. Any other topics? Thank you, Ms. Bonnie. Any other topics or ideas, guys?
I mentioned in the chat information about the facility inventory efforts and/or CRISE data and reporting, but that seems like we got a lot of ideas already. So, you know, just throwing out a few more.
Okay, no, that's great. Anything else? And of course, if you think of anything once you're off the call and you have a great idea in the shower tonight, you can always email Bonnie and Noah, and they'll get them in the roster of possible ideas. All right. Well, hearing no other discussion, thank you everybody for your time and the conversation and the presentations today. I think we learned a lot, and it's always great to hear everyone's ideas and learn what's going on in your parts of Texas. I'm excited about the 2021 Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and kind of, you know, it's a great time in this discipline, and there's so many cool tools and resources out there now, more than there's ever been. I think working together, we're going to do some really cool stuff and across the state of Texas. So with that, we will move to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Frank.
Thank you, Frank. And will someone second?
Eddie, second the motion.
Who was that?
Is Eddie second the motion?
All right, thank you, Eddie.
I'm sorry, but if we don't.
I will assume that all are in favor. If you are not in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Right. But where's the?
All right, otherwise,
Bye.
all right, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you.
Bye guys.